Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy right here. This is the SKBlades / Buck Knives Goodfella. First off, though, I want to thank, in the name of full disclosure, SKBlades for sending this little guy along as a review sample. They reached out to me, said, hey Nick, you want to check anything out? I said, well, sure, but I'm talking about the good, the great, the bad, the ugly, might be a gem, might be junk. They said, sure, why not, send it along. And so that's a beautiful thing. What I have to assume here is, well, actually, I've just done my best to make sure that I've not, let that influence my review here too much, but there you go. Next thing, size comparison. Of course, here it is against your Spyderco Delica. So you can see here, size-wise, in terms of usable blade length, they're actually not so far apart. So there's that Ontario rat number 1. And your rat number 2 is around here someplace. Come here, rat 2. Rat 2. There we go. And so you can see here, there's your rat 2. Next thing, what the heck is an SKBlades? Well, SKBlades is a company. They're a Buck dealer, basically, but they work with Buck because they're apparently right close to them. And see, Buck right here. They work with them to come up with sprint runs that they feel, well, I don't know if sprint is the term, but they order special configurations from Buck that they think are going to be a little bit more interesting, a little bit, above and beyond. Sort of a custom-ish Buck knife based to their designs. And in fact, this guy is actually a Buck Knives Squire, just with some extra fanciness put on there by SKBlades, well, by Buck at SK's behalf. So that's what's going on with these folks. And so anyways, let's go ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of this very interesting knife right here. So on the good side, first off, it is made in the US of A. See right there, USA. That's always a nice thing. I'm from the States. I cheer for my home team. Probably you do for your own country. So there you go. Next thing, nice blade. This is actually a very nice blade. This is a CPM 154 blade right here, which is a really nice particle metallurgy sort of steel. And it's been heat treated by Paul Bose, which is gonna kick it up a notch, so to speak. Buck, one thing they always have is their heat treat is on freaking point, and I've seen no evidence of anything different with this guy with the 154 here. Sharpens up nicely. Actually, 154 is a nice, CPM 154, that is a really nice steel, because it's relatively easy to sharpen, it's very stain resistant, it's just nice, so that's good. Pardon me. Next thing, this is a locking knife. As you can see here in the back, when I pull the blade out, this little bar drops in, then pops back up. That's right, this is a back lock. Or more specifically, it's a tail lock style back lock, whatever it is. This is a locking knife. That means that if you actually open this guy, there is no way that this guy is going to close, which is kind of a nice thing. I mean, especially if you're doing kind of pushing cuts into things, those can be situations in where a classic slip joint might be less than ideal. I do love myself a lock-in traditional. I really hope that that's something we see more often in the traditional market, and it's a beautiful thing. Next thing, this is a very easy open knife without a nail nick. You can see here that there is both the nail nick here, but also there's a fair amount of the grind sticks up a little bit. It's very easy to get in there with your fingers and just pinch this guy open. I never once felt like I needed to actually use the nail nick on this guy. You can, but it almost feels superfluous, and that to me is great. I'm a big fan of non-nail nick traditional knives just because it makes life a little bit easier. There's a joy there. Next thing, this does actually come with a belt sheath, which isn't on my table. Actually, it can be right here. I'll show it off. It is just a good old-fashioned little leather belt sheath thing. It's Buck Knives. It doesn't particularly match anything, but it's kind of nice that they offer you that option. There is no pocket clip, so that's kind of one way to carry it. I ended up carrying this guy in a pocket slip or something along those lines, or just in the coin pocket of my pants. Also worked pretty well, but it's good at least that you've got that option there. Next thing, this guy has a very easy action after the break-in. And I did spend a little time breaking this guy in, just sitting there, watching a TV show or something, like going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then do it a little bit clean off, going back and forth with a clean, that kind of thing. It's a stupid process, honestly, but afterwards, this is super smooth. This is a really nice smooth action here. It's a backlock with a very nice tension. This is really what I'd like a traditional backlocky knife to function like. That's really nice. Next thing, this is a very unintimidating knife. I mean, legally speaking, this is a small knife. Here we go. Let me pull out my ruler. This is a knife that is less less than 3 inches, about 2.75 inches worth of blade length on this guy, which is going to make it legal in a bunch of places. But the micarta on here also looks a little bit like a wood. It's just, there's a lot, this isn't something people are going to look at and dive for the freaking hills, which I appreciate. It's got a very high lunchroom acceptability factor, which can be very, very nice. And the fact that it's under 2.75 is going to make it okay with a bunch of laws around the world, so that's good. Then finally on the, of course, consult a local lawyer. Finally, on the good side, it is only 95 bucks. Now, look, that's a chunk of change for a buck knife, certainly. But it's a stainless steel traditional knife that looks really, really good and is done pretty well. Honestly, that's not a bad deal. I don't have any problem with 95 bucks for this, given, you know, what we got going on here. Yeah, I think that's solid. And so, to me, that's what's good, is I think the price is definitely, it's a little up there, but it's fine. It's a good price for what you're getting here. It's very unintimidating, comes with a sheath, very smooth action after break-in. It is easy to open without the nail nick. It is truly ambidextrous. I love a lock-and traditional knife. The blade on this guy is very nice, and it is made in the US of A. On the great side, to me, honestly, I just find this knife really attractive. It's just freaking beautiful. With the burlap micarta handles down here, nickel silver little bolsters on this guy, which look really nice, especially, you know, got them all polished up, and this has been being carried here, so it's a little hazier than usual. It's got the nice hardware, it's got hidden hardware all throughout here, and just, it's an attractive design. It's a classic. There's a reason that this knife has been around for a long time as a buck. Just works really, it's nice. And so to me, that's what's great, is that this is just a gorgeous knife. So on the bad side, this is a traditional style knife, and so that means some traditional style things. Namely, there is no pocket clip. There is no ability to take this guy apart. It is a two-hand only open knife, which is, you know, it's a thing. Maybe you can fidget around enough to close it one-handed. Like if you have another surface, you can do something like that, and then get it the rest of the way there. But with a back lock style with a bottom lock, I'm not skilled enough to do it one-handed reliably. Next thing, the belt case on this guy almost feels a little bit weird, I'm going to be honest with you. I ended up, like I said, carrying it off in a pocket slip sort of an arrangement, which is nice. This one has a loop for a pen on the side, which means it won't get scratched up as it's rattling around with your keys. And I would almost prefer to see a very basic pocket or pocket slip instead of the belt case on this. This would be a little weird coming out of that belt case. Let's be real here. Next thing, they are definitely doing a little bit of recurving with this guy. See here that in this little area there is no sharpening choil, and so there's a little bit of blade curvature coming around as a consequence of that. And as you sharpen this guy more and more, unless you add a choil, you're going to end up with more and more of that. It's not something I'm super in love with, and going to make sharpening a little trickier. Trickier. Although maybe it'll be trippy too if you're like on acid when you do it. Don't do drugs, kids. So anyways, there you go. Next thing, unfortunately, the nail nick on this guy, like I said, it's not really necessary because you can pinch this open every day of the week. The tension is just right for that. But it does catch crud. It is a little bit of a crud catcher, and if you're cutting into food, for instance, a tape or something like that, it's just going to get stuck up in there, and it's not too bad. It's not too deep. There is a way to get up in there, but that's never something I'm super in love with, and so honestly, I think this would have been a little bit better of a knife without the nail nick altogether. I know that's maybe a controversial view. A lot of people find that an important part of the traditional experience, but for me, it's a part I don't eat. So there's that. And then finally, this is still, unfortunately, built like a buck knife. It has still a little bit of blade play back and forth. It's not bad at all in this one, but it's there. There are still some gaps. If you hold this guy up to the light, you can definitely see the occasional little bit of gapping down in there. And they still didn't quite polish down the pivot. What you can see here is that you can see exactly where the pivot goes through and see that it's still kind of pushing up a little bit more, which just, yeah, that's not super ideal. I'm not a huge fan of that. It's not a big deal, but it's getting to be a little bit of a deal. And unfortunately, the first one of these I got, when this was initially sent out to me by SK Blades, the first one had some pretty substantial blade play. It wasn't just kind of run-of-the-mill, you know, it's a buck knife blade play. It was some pretty serious play. I mentioned it to him, and he had one shipped out the next day, and he said that he does the same for any other customer. He just didn't check that on that one, but still, I do wish that had got caught in the QC process, and more importantly, I wish Buck hadn't sent it out of the factory like that, because, yeah, that's not great. And so, to me, that's what's bad here, is that the first one of these guys had substantial blade play, although the SK Blades definitely made it right quickly. I mean, it is still built like a Buck knife. The nail nick is a bit of a crud catcher. And by the way, I want to be clear, the first blade play wasn't to the point where it was dangerous, but it was the point where it's like, oh, you can try harder than that, Buck. But anyways, so there you go. It's still built like a Buck knife, with some gaps, with some little fit and finish fouls here and there. The nail nick is a crud catcher. It's doing some recurving, unfortunately. The belt case is a little weird for this knife. It is a two-hand open knife, primarily. Although I guess maybe you could do... Yeah, I'm just going to... Hey, I got it. And there is no disassembly. There's no pocket clip, because it's a traditional knife, and that's kind of the story there. On the ugly front, look, the play issue was ugly, but the SK Blades, that is, did a really good job of handling that. But yeah, that's there. I'm a little torn as to whether that's bad or ugly, but, you know, good customer service can make up for a lot of ugly. There's a message there, although it still shouldn't have left like that. On the final conclusion front, look, the biggest issue I feel like this knife has is actually the factory. It really feels like Buck doesn't discriminate between the huge runs of mass production finishing and high-end small batchy sorts of knives. This high-end upgraded run seems to end up with some of the same fit and finish as a basic Buck knife that you just handle in a regular store. And unfortunately, for me, that kind of hits the wrong note, because I feel like models like this, like the Goodfella here, or the premium 110s and things like that, those are sort of a love letter to the design and to the brand. You buy one of these because you like the Squire a lot, and you'd like one that's a little fancier, a little bit maybe nicer, something like that. And so I would really hope that Buck would put their very best assemblers, their very best factory work into those kinds of runs, and ask them to take a little bit more care. This is supposed to be Buck at their best, but unfortunately, I hope this isn't their best, because, you know, guys, I think you can do better than that, and the little gaps in the blade play thing, that's a little bit ugly. And unfortunately, I had this experience before with the limited edition Marksman that was on my table, and it's really disappointing. This is outside of SK Blades' control. They're not making these, they're using Buck, but it does mean that I think they need to be a little choosier in QC. And maybe see if they can put the pressure on Buck to amp it up a little bit in terms of the finishing for these higher-end models, because that's a really unimpressive thing. But the thing is, with that said, the price on this guy is $95. That's a chunk of change, but it really does change the matter of things. If this were a $300 knife, there is no way in heck. $200, I don't think but at that kind of a price point, I'm pretty okay with it, honestly. And especially with the maker doing as good a job as he did, and like, oh, that's wrong. Send it back, I'll get you one in the mail today. That's the way to go. And with all that said, I actually love this knife. I mean, I've been talking a lot. I've been, complaining about the quality issue there. But the thing is, functionally, substantially, this is a really, really great piece. I mean, it is a great design. I mean, the Buck Squire, nice choice. It's got a really nice blade. The 154, CPM 154, that is, coupled with that heat treat, coupled with the overall profile, the thinness of the blade, the thinness of the grind. This is really nice and thin behind the edge there. I mean, nice thin at the tip. This is a good, and it's a really solid everyday tool. This is one of the knives that I've reviewed in kind of my new gem hunting style, where I really, really wanted to make sure that I gave this its due. And so this was in my pocket for a full week, and you know what? Every damn time I used it, it worked really well. And you know what? On top of all that, it's pretty. It's freaking gorgeous. And even with the minor picky flaws in this second one, at that price point, I'm okay with it. Because, honestly, this does offer a really nice dressy folder option at a size that's going to be legally possible for a lot of folks, that's going to be good for a budget sort of price point. And let's be real here. I think this is a really nice dressy option, because it looks nicer and higher end than a lot of your easily available traditional knives. I mean, your GECs and whatnot are great, but they're hard to find. But this is going to be a lot easier to do. It has the benefit of stainless steel, of the CPM 154, which is a big deal, as well as of locking construction. A lot of people aren't going to be okay with a slip joint knife in their everyday life. I'm kind of one of them. And so, as a result, being a locking stainless steel gentleman sort of dressy knife, or gentlewoman for that matter, what do I care, this really is pretty good, and it's competing with a bunch of higher end sorts of things for this sort of stainless gentleman's sort of knife. It's competing with things like the Chris Reeve Menandi, the Burger EXK, the higher-end Great Eastern Cutlery stuff. I mean, sure, the Menandi, the EXK are in a different universe with pricing, and frankly with finishing. But that's a thing. And for $100, this is pretty solid. So this knife is absolutely out of my lane. This is not the kind of area that I generally spend my knife life in. And despite the little finishing issues, despite the traditionalness, and even despite that bad experience, which again was made right, I guess, I still really like this knife. I still think this is a gem. I think this is a really, really nice option. And for somebody who's looking for a dressy, sort of gentlemanly, gentlewomanly sort of folder, this is something you should absolutely consider, because it's got a nice blend of good functionality, good fashionability, I suppose, and just overall everyday carry workability. This is a nice, classy folder option that I think is going to be workable at a lot of budgets. It's a stellar functional tool, and it's damn pretty. And for $100, I can't think of anything else that's going to get you in this same ballpark. And so if you're after a classy carry option, I think this little guy is going to be a very good fella for you to check out. Hope this has been interesting to you, and have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.